How far is it really from the top 10% to the top 1%? By income, about 2.5 times. But by net worth, it's a $12 million canyon, and you could save for centuries and still not clear it. And the strangest part, even if you made the jump, you still wouldn't be at the top. The 1% isn't where the climb ends, it's where it starts getting steep. There are two ways to measure where you stand, and they tell completely different stories. Income is the money that hits your accounts every month. Net worth is everything you own minus everything you owe. Most videos lump them together, and that's the mistake because they're two different ladders, and not even the same shape. Our income numbers come from the Census Bureau's current population survey, and the net worth numbers from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, the most trusted snapshot of American household wealth there is. So before we climb, do me a favour and hit like and subscribe so this reaches more people standing exactly where you are. Start with income, because it's the ladder most people feel every day. To land in the top 10% of US households, you need to earn around $251,000 a year. It already puts a household ahead of 90% of the country. Now climb to the top 5%, and you're looking at roughly $335,000 a year. The steps are getting steeper, but they're still steps. You can see the next one from where you're standing. Then you reach for the top 1%, and the income jumps to about $659,000 a year. Now let's be clear, that is a brutal climb. We're talking about one household in 100, the kind of income very few people will ever touch in their lives. But here's the part that matters for our story. Going from the top 10% to the top 1% multiplies your income by about 2.5 times. Hard. Absolutely. But it's the kind of hard that a bigger career, a business that takes off, or two high earners under one roof can actually chase. The ladder is steep, but every rung's still made of the same thing. Earning more. Hold on to that, because the moment we switch to net worth, the rungs stop being made of effort at all. Here's where it stops being a staircase. Watch what happens when we run the exact same comparison using net worth instead of income. To be in the top 10% of households by net worth, you need around $1.9 million. The top 5%? About $3.8 million. And to crack the top 1%, the Federal Reserve's data puts the line around 13 to 14 million. Now look at what just happened. On the income ladder, 10 to 5 to 1 was a steady climb. Here, 10 to 5 barely doubles, but 5 to 1 nearly quadruples. The steps aren't just bigger than the income ladder. They're speeding up as you go. The income ladder is a staircase. The net worth ladder is a cliff. And we're about to find out why that cliff keeps getting taller the higher you climb. So why does net worth explode like that when income only creeps up? It comes down to one thing almost nobody explains. What your wealth is actually made of changes as you climb. And that changes everything about how it grows. Think about a typical household sitting right around that top 10% line, with close to $2 million in net worth. Where does that money actually live? For most of them, the biggest chunk is home equity. Then a 401k, maybe an IRA, some cash in savings, a car or two. And here's the quiet problem with that mix. Most of it just sits there. Your house doesn't pay you. Your car definitely doesn't pay you. That equity looks great on a spreadsheet, but you can't eat drywall and you can't spend your kitchen. It's wealth that holds still. Now look at a household up near that top 1% line. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, something flips at the very top. Their wealth isn't mostly a house anymore. It's mostly stocks and business equity. And those assets do the opposite of sitting still. They compound. A portfolio that throws off returns is basically a second version of you, out there earning while you sleep, never taking a vacation, never asking for a raise. One household's money is resting. The other household's money is working a full-time job. Give those two mixes 20 years and they don't just grow apart. They grow apart faster and faster every single year. Now, to be fair, the numbers don't tell the whole story, and I'd be lying if I pretended they did. A lot of where you land depends on your age. A 60-year-old has had decades to let compounding do its thing that a 30-year-old simply hasn't had yet. So comparing the two isn't really fair. And a high income doesn't automatically mean a high net worth. There are people pulling in top 1% paychecks who've barely built any wealth at all because they spend almost everything that comes in. But even with all those caveats stacked up, the big picture doesn't change. The shape of the climb is real. The cliff is real. And that cliff leads to a question that trips up almost everyone. If you're already at the top 10%, what would it actually take to reach the top 1%? Most of us assume the answer is the obvious one. Save harder, earn more, cut deeper. So let's test that because the math is going to surprise you. The distance between the top 10% net worth door and the top 1% door is about $12 million. Now imagine you're a serious saver. You put away $50,000 a year, every single year, no misses. How long until pure saving carries you across that gap? around 240 years. You'd need 10 lifetimes saving like a machine and still wouldn't get there on contributions alone. So if saving can't do it, what can? Compounding. Park that first 1.9 million in assets that grow at normal market returns, and the gap closes in roughly 25 to 30 years. And yeah, I know that still sounds like forever, but sit with the difference for a second. 240 years of pure saving versus 25 of letting your money grow on its own. Same gap. One road is impossible, the other is just long. And here's the part that flips it. Whether you keep adding 50,000 a year or stop contributing entirely barely changes that answer. The growth isn't coming from what you add anymore. It's coming from what you already own. The gap was never a saving problem. It was an ownership problem the whole time. And that quietly rewrites what the climb even is. Down at the bottom of the ladder, you move up by being a better earner. You get the raise, you save the difference, you inch upward. The higher you go, the less it's about your paycheck, and the more it's about what you own. By the time you're talking about the 1%, the people there mostly didn't out-earn their way in. They out-owned their way in. Businesses, equity, assets stacked over decades. That's the real reason a top 1% income and a top 1% net worth are two different worlds, held by two different groups of people. One is a great year, the other is 30 quiet years of letting ownership compound. Which brings us to the part that flips the whole idea on its head. We've spent this entire video treating the top 1% like it's the summit. It isn't, not even close. Remember, the jump from the top 10% to the top 1% was about $12 million in net worth. Now look one step higher. To go from the top 1% to the top 1/10 of 1%, you don't climb another 12 million. The Federal Reserve's numbers put that next door near 60 million. That's a jump of roughly $48 million, about 4 times bigger than the gap you just stared at in disbelief. And it doesn't stop there. Past the 0.1% sit the truly ultra-wealthy, and the distance to them isn't another step. It's another planet. The rich pull away from the merely wealthy for the exact same reason the wealthy pull away from the comfortable. Their money is built out of things that grow on their own. So that 1% you've been picturing as the top of the mountain, it's really just base camp. The mountain keeps going, and the air gets thinner with every step. If you've ever looked at the people at the very top and felt like you were falling behind, understand the game you are comparing yourself to. You are racing a ladder that gets steeper the higher it goes, against people whose money was already compounding while yours was still being earned. That's not a fair fight, and it was never supposed to be. Measuring your life against the 0.1% is like measuring your morning jog against a rocket. You'll lose every time, and losing tells you nothing about whether you're actually doing well. So if the gap is really an ownership problem, then the fix is to start owning on purpose. And the good news is you don't need a top 1% income to do it. The move is almost boringly simple. Every time your income goes up, send part of that raise straight into assets that compound before you ever see the money. Set it to happen automatically, so it becomes ownership before it ever has the chance to become spending. Buy the boring index fund. Fill up the retirement account that's been sitting half empty. None of this feels dramatic on any single Tuesday, but that's the exact mechanism that turns an earner into an owner. And it's the only mechanism that ever moves you up the steep part of the ladder. You can't out-earn the gap. You can only out-own it, one automatic contribution at a time. So let's put this whole climb back together. It's not about closing the distance to the very top, because that distance is designed to keep stretching. It's about reaching the one point on the ladder where your money stops sitting still and starts climbing for you. That's the real milestone, not a percentile, a turning point. The day your investments start growing faster than you can add to them is the day you stop being the engine and your money becomes the engine. And if you're somewhere on the early part of that climb right now, give yourself more credit than you probably do. Maybe you maxed out your Roth IRA this year. Maybe you finally bought the boring index fund instead of the flashy thing. Maybe you paid off the credit card or passed on the upgrade you didn't need. From the outside, none of that looks like much. Those are the exact moves that flip your net worth from money that sits still into money that compounds. That's not falling behind. That's quietly building the engine. Where you are today isn't where you're stuck. It's just where the climb is starting to tilt in your favour. So before you go, here's a question I genuinely want your answer to. Have you already made the move from earner to owner, or are you still working up to it? If you have, what was the first step that flipped your money from sitting still to actually working for you? And if you haven't yet, what's been holding you back? Drop it in the comments, because someone scrolling who's standing exactly where you are might read your answer and finally start. And if this video helped the climb make a little more sense,